Hello and welcome to the AO1 for Article 5. So remember, AO1 is the marks you get for legal knowledge and understanding. So you've got to get some cases in there, you've got to get some article numbers, and I would put this at the beginning of an essay, get your 8 out of 8 for OCR, and then also at the beginning of a scenario question. Okay, so first of all, I would say what Article 5 actually is. So Article 5, everyone has the right to liberty and security. Then I think I would define what liberty is. So liberty means physical liberty. That's the case of Engel, E-N-G-E-L. Deprivation of liberty. What they said in Ghazadi is that deprivation of liberty is a question of degree and intensity. Now, the acid test to see whether you have been deprived of your liberty comes from Lady Hale in Cheshire West. And the test is the person under continuous supervision and not free to leave? If the answer to that question is yes, they are under continuous supervision and control, they are not free to leave, then Article 5 is being breached. So Article 5 gives you this right to liberty and security. No one should be deprived of their liberty unless it's for one of the lawful reasons set out in Article 5, 1, subsections A to F. So this includes things like being convicted of a crime, being arrested, the breach of a court order, being suspected of committing an offence for educational purposes, being of unsound mind, being an alcoholic, and stopping somebody illegally entering the country. So I would try and learn some of those subsections. I would say probably the main one that you're going to get kind of asked about is going to be about arrest, about conviction. The next thing to make a note of is that it must be a prescribed procedure. So if we are going to deprive you of your liberty, that means it has to be a lawful procedure. It's got to be prescribed. It has to be carried out by a qualified person who has the authority to deprive you of your liberty, and they must also be independent. Now, if you read Article 5 properly, you will see that Article 5, subsection 2, prompt reason must be given for any deprivation of your liberty, and it has to be given in a language that you understand. You can quote the case of Taylor. You must also be promptly brought before a judicial officer, the case of Brogan, that's Article 5.3. So in other words, you should be brought before a judge, in a fairly quick time. Article 5.4 says that you have the right to bring proceedings if you think your liberty, you have been deprived of your liberty. So that will be under Article 5.4. And then finally, Article 5.5 deals with the issue of compensation, that if your liberty has been deprived, you're entitled to be released, but also you're entitled to compensation. So those are the main parts of Article 5. Now, what I would just add, in an essay, I would talk about the Policeketling and I would talk about the care cases. In a scenario, I would only talk about police detention if it was relevant to the scenario, or talk about care if it is relevant to the scenario. So first of all, Kettling. The case of Austin, they were detained for 7 hours. And these were not protesters, but they were kind of in the vicinity of a protest. So they were contained at Oxford Circus tube station for 7 hours. And there was no breach of Article 5 because the measures were in good faith. They were proportionate and they were enforced no longer than necessary. So we can't give a set time period. We can't say, oh, you can detain people for 5 hours, 7 hours, 10 hours. It depends upon the situation. The case of Moose said that kettling should only be used as a last resort, and it should only be used if a breach of the peace is imminent. So really the police should only do it if they are doing it for public safety purposes. Then talking about care, so if you get a scenario question or you want to talk about it in an essay, can we detain people in care? Well, we know that we can if they are of an unsound mind. We can detain people under the Mental Health Act 1983. Again, the acid test, it comes down to Cheshire West. Is the person free to leave? If they're not free to leave, then Article 5 is being breached. The case of DE says there doesn't have to be a physical lock on the door. You don't actually have to lock somebody away. And then, I don't know how this is pronounced, Winterwerp. I mean, it's spelt with W's, but I don't know whether it's kind of pronounced with a V or a W. But Winterwerp said that in order to detain you, it's got to be, your condition has to be sufficient to justify detention. It must be regularly reviewed, and it has to be a medically recognised mental condition which is diagnosed by an expert. So those are the key AO1 points that I would be putting down in a scenario and in an essay. Tune in later for the AO3, which is the evaluation needed for an essay.